Aino stood quietly in the middle of a beautiful garden, carrying a heavy tray filled with drinks. She was wearing her old, faded school uniform because that was the only thing her stepmother allowed her to wear. All around her, women in fancy dresses laughed, posed for pictures, and sipped on champagne. No one looked at Ino as family. In fact, many of the guests whispered to each other, thinking she was just one of the servers hired for the bridal shower. But Ino wasn't a worker. She was the real daughter of Mr. Etim, the man who once owned the house and gave her everything until he died. After his death, her stepmother Didi took control of everything and turned Ino into a maid. As Ino moved from table to table, serving drinks with a forced smile, her heart burned with pain. Her stepsister Adanma, the bride-to-be, sat on a golden chair surrounded by gifts, while Ino stood on her feet all day like a servant. Then Didi, with a fake, sweet smile, took the microphone and said to the guests, "This is Ino. She loves to serve. She's always been helpful." The crowd laughed politely, but Ino knew it wasn't a joke. It was an insult. Her face turned red with shame, but she kept her head down. What the guests didn't know was that Ino had just overheard something shocking. Earlier that morning, she passed by the study and heard the groom, Obi, speaking on the phone. He was not marrying Adanma for love. His voice was serious, full of regret. He said he had no choice, that his heart still belonged to someone else. Ino stood frozen outside the door, listening to every word. She remembered the name he whispered, Zara, the same girl Didi once insulted and forced away. Ino's hands shook as she held the tray tighter. Her heart beat faster. She realized something powerful in that moment. This day, this party, this whole event, it was all built on a lie. And maybe, just maybe, it was time for Ino to stop being quiet, because now she had something her stepmother didn't expect, the truth. Everyone at the bridal shower kept saying how perfect everything was. The garden was filled with golden chairs that sparkled under the sun. Expensive flowers were placed everywhere. Waiters carried glasses of cold champagne, and Adanma, the bride, wore a bright smile as she posed for photos in her fancy dress. People clapped, laughed, and called it the event of the year. But deep in her heart, Ino knew the truth. This perfect day was a big, shiny lie. The night before the shower, Ino had gone to the kitchen to get water when she heard a quiet voice coming from the study. She tiptoed closer and realized it was Obi, the groom, talking on the phone. He sounded nervous, almost sad. He thought no one could hear him, but Ino was right outside the door. His words shook her. He said he wasn't marrying Adanma because he loved her. He said his family had pushed him into it, and he was trying to do the right thing. But then he said something that made Ino stop breathing for a moment. He still loved someone else. Not just anyone, but someone the family didn't approve of. Obi whispered the name Zara. Ino remembered that name very well. Zara was Obi's ex-girlfriend, the one Didi had once shouted at and called trash when she came to visit. Didi said she wasn't good enough for someone like Obi. She chased her away like a stray dog. And now, the same Obi was still in love with Zara, but was too afraid to go against his family. Ino stood there in shock, holding her breath so no one would hear her. Her heart pounded loudly in her chest. She felt angry, not just for Zara, but for herself too. How could they all be laughing and dancing like everything was perfect when the groom's heart belonged to another woman? And how could Didi and Adanma continue to act like they were better than everyone else when they were living in a lie? Ino's eyes burned with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. That night, she didn't sleep much. She just kept thinking about what she heard. The world saw a beautiful love story, but Ino saw a secret waiting to explode. And in that moment, something in her began to change. Maybe this lie didn't have to stay hidden forever. Maybe it was time someone told the truth. Early in the morning, before the sun fully came out, Didi woke Ino up and told her to scrub the marble floors in the living room. The bridal shower was that day, and everything had to be perfect, except Ino. No matter how tired she was or how much her back ached, Didi didn't care. Ino was never treated like family. She was more like a housemaid, and even worse, a hidden shame. While everyone else got to sleep in soft beds and enjoy warm breakfast, Ino cleaned floors and washed windows like she didn't exist. When the guests started arriving, the big garden came alive with music, decorations, and laughter. Tables were full of food, drinks, and pretty flowers. Everyone wore fine clothes and makeup. Eno, on the other hand, was wearing her old, faded school uniform, the only thing Didi allowed her to wear. She wasn't allowed to sit with the guests or even eat the food. She was only allowed to serve. While others smiled for pictures, she carried trays and picked up trash quietly. Then something happened that broke her spirit even more. Adanma, her stepsister, and the bride-to-be was laughing and dancing with her friends when she suddenly spilled a glass of red juice on her bright dress. Everyone gasped, but before the bride could even react, Didi turned sharply to Eno and shouted, "Kneel down and clean it up." Eno, in shock, slowly walked over, got on her knees, and began wiping the dress, the floor, everything, right there, in front of everyone. People stared. Some giggled behind their hands. Others looked away, uncomfortable, but nobody helped. Nobody said a word. As Eno scrubbed the floor on her knees, her heart felt heavy with pain, but her mind started to become clear. She looked up at the sky for a second and thought, why am I always silent? Why do I let them treat me like this? Right then and there, she made a strong promise to herself, a vow that no one could hear, but her heart felt loudly. She said in her mind, "This is the last time they humiliate me. I will not be quiet anymore. I will not be their shame. They will remember this day, but not for the reasons they planned." And with that, something inside Eno shifted. She wasn't broken. She was rising. The same hands that wiped floors would soon shake the very foundation of their lies. That evening, after all the noise and celebration had calmed down, Eno quietly slipped out of the house. She didn't tell anyone. Her steps were fast, but quiet, as she made her way through the empty streets, heading toward the edge of town. Her heart was beating hard in her chest, but her mind was clear. She had one plan, and she knew it was risky, but she also knew it was the only way to take back her voice. She reached a small flower shop that looked closed, the lights off, and the door locked, but she waited. She stood under a streetlight, cold and nervous, clutching the small note she had written earlier. Minutes passed. Then the door opened. A woman stepped out, tall, strong, beautiful. It was Zara, Obi's ex-girlfriend, the one everyone said was long gone, the one Didi once called trash. Zara froze when she saw Eno standing there, their eyes locked. There was silence. Then Zara, confused but calm, asked, "Why are you here?" Eno didn't hesitate. She looked straight at her and said softly but firmly, "Because they made me invisible, and you're the only one who can make them see." Zara's eyes narrowed, trying to understand. Eno explained everything, how her stepmother treated her like a servant, how she was made to serve drinks in her school uniform, and how Obi was still in love with someone, but marrying Adanma for reasons that weren't real. She told Zara about the phone call she had overheard, and how Obi still hadn't moved on. Zara listened quietly, arms crossed, not sure if she should believe Eno. But then Eno looked up with tears in her eyes and said, "I don't want to break anyone's heart. I just want them to stop breaking mine. I just want to be seen, for once." Her voice shook, but her message was strong. Zara slowly stepped closer and looked Eno in the eyes. "You want the truth to come out?" she asked. Eno nodded. "Then let's make them listen." In that quiet moment under the dark sky, something powerful happened. Two women, hurt by the same people, ignored by the same family, decided to stand together, not for revenge, but for truth, for respect, for the right to be heard. Eno didn't feel alone anymore, and with Zara by her side, the silence that once swallowed her was about to be broken, loudly. The music was loud again. The bridal shower had started moving smoothly like nothing happened. People were laughing, dancing, and taking photos. Adanma, the bride, was dancing in the center, smiling like a queen. The decorations sparkled under the sun, and the garden looked like something from a movie. Eno stood quietly near the drinks table, holding a tray, trying to stay unnoticed. She felt tired, but her mind was sharp. She knew what was coming. Then suddenly the front gate opened. Everyone turned. A woman walked in slowly. It was Zara, Obi's ex. She was calm, tall and confident. She wore a red dress that caught everyone's attention, simple but beautiful, and somehow brighter than the bride. She didn't look angry. She didn't look scared. She just walked like she belonged there. Obi, who was giving a speech with a glass in his hand, stopped talking the moment he saw her. His mouth stayed open, his eyes wide. The guests started whispering to each other. "Isn't that Obi's ex? What is she doing here? Why is she dressed like that?" Didi's face changed immediately. The same woman who had been smiling and showing off now looked shocked and nervous. She didn't expect this. Nobody did. But Zara didn't look at anyone. She walked past all of them and came straight to Ino. And then she did something no one expected. She hugged Ino. Tightly, openly. Everyone saw it. It wasn't a quick hug. It was the kind of hug that says, I see you, I stand with you. People were confused. Why would Obi's ex hug the maid? Who was this Ino really? Obi looked even more uncomfortable now. He stepped back a little, not sure what to do. Adanma's smile disappeared slowly. Her hands dropped. The music kept playing, but the vibe had completely changed. Everyone felt it. Zara still didn't say anything, not a single word. She just stood there beside Ino, holding her hand now. It was quiet for a few seconds, but it felt like a long time. In that moment, Ino wasn't just the girl in a school uniform carrying trays. She wasn't the housemaid. She wasn't invisible. People were looking at her differently now, with respect, with curiosity. Something had shifted, and Didi knew it. This wasn't going to end the way she planned. The storm was coming, and it had just walked through the gate in a red dress. Zara looked around the garden. Everyone's eyes were on her. The music had stopped. The laughter was gone. Even the birds seemed quiet. She slowly walked to the front and picked up the microphone from the DJ's table. Her voice was calm, but firm. She said, Obi and I dated for 4 years. Gasps filled the air. I was the woman he planned to marry. People looked at Obi. He stood frozen, his hands shaking slightly. Zara continued, but his mother, she said I wasn't good enough. She called me names. She called me trash. And Obi listened. He left me, not because he stopped loving me, but because he was scared to stand up for me. The garden fell completely silent. Zara looked directly at Obi. Tell them the truth, Obi, or I will. Obi opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He looked at the guests, then at his bride-to-be, Adanma. Then he looked at his mother, Didi, who was now holding her chest, trying to smile like nothing was wrong. Zara turned to Ino and reached for her hand. You, she said softly, you know what it feels like to be made small, don't you? Ino's eyes watered a little. She nodded. Slowly she stepped forward. The same girl who had been serving drinks in her old school uniform now stood at the center, beside Zara. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't scared. She looked at the guests, many of whom had ignored her all day, and said, yes, I know. I've been treated like a nobody in my own father's house. Like I don't matter. Like I don't deserve to be seen. She paused, took a deep breath. But today I refuse to be invisible. Today I speak. Gasps again. Phones were out now. People were recording. Obi looked at both women, his past and his truth standing side by side. Zara raised the mic again. This wedding is built on lies, on fear, on control. She turned back to Obi one last time. So, Obi, will you tell them? Or shall I? Obi looked like he might cry. Adanma was now staring at him, confused and angry. The garden that once felt like a fairy tale was now filled with tension. The truth was no longer hiding. It was standing in the open, wearing red and holding the hand of the girl they all called a servant. And everyone was watching. Eno stood there, holding the microphone with both hands. Her heart was beating fast, but her voice was steady. She looked around at the shocked faces, people who had laughed at her just hours ago, people who didn't even know she lived in that house, because they never noticed her. She took a deep breath and spoke. I was told to serve today, she began, to wear my old school uniform and carry trays like a maid. I was told not to speak, to stay invisible, but I've been quiet for too long. Whispers moved through the crowd. Some guests looked embarrassed. Others looked guilty. Ino pointed gently toward her stepmother, Didi. That woman, she said, has treated me like I don't matter since my father died. She made me sleep in the servants' quarters, while her daughter got the master bedroom. I cooked all the meals for this party. I scrubbed the floors. I wasn't even allowed to sit at the table. The crowd gasped again. Some shook their heads in disbelief. She turned to Adanma, the bride. You never once asked where I lived. You never cared to know. You treated me like a worker in my own home. Adanma's smile faded. Her eyes blinked fast, trying to understand what was happening. Then Ino turned to Obi. Her voice became firmer. And you, she said. You let everyone believe you were in love with Adanma. You smiled, held her hand and planned this wedding like nothing was wrong. But just last night, you were still texting Zara. Everyone turned to look at Obi. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Ino continued, You told her you missed her, that you didn't want to marry Adanma, but you had no choice. The air was heavy with silence. Adanma suddenly gasped, covered her mouth, and dropped the wine glass in her hand. It shattered on the floor. She looked at Obi, waiting for him to deny it, but he just stood there, frozen. Tears filled her eyes. Without saying a word, Adanma turned and ran out of the party, her dress trailing behind her. People stepped back, unsure what to do. Some whispered, some filmed. Ino stood in the middle, no longer the quiet girl in the background. The truth had been spoken, the lies were broken, and the party was no longer a celebration. It was a storm. As soon as Ino finished speaking, there was silence in the air, thick and heavy. People didn't know whether to clap, cry, or leave. Before anyone could react, Didi stormed toward the stage. Her heels clicked fast against the marble floor. She snatched the microphone from Ino's hand and shouted, "Lies! All of it! Don't believe a word she said!" But it was already too late. Several guests had been recording the moment Ino spoke. They had posted it online. Within minutes, phones all around the party started buzzing. People stared at their screens, shocked. Some were showing their friends. Others were already typing in the comments. The video was everywhere. The comments came fast. Who treats their stepdaughter like that? She's the real bride here. This wedding should be cancelled. Didi should be ashamed. Even reporters began calling. Some guests said they saw people from gossip blogs arriving at the gates. What was supposed to be a perfect day for Didi and her daughter was turning into a public disaster. Didi grabbed Ino's arm and dragged her to the side, her voice low and angry. "You've ruined everything," she hissed. "All of it! Do you know how much we spent? Do you know how long I've planned this?" Ino looked at her with calm eyes. No more fear, no more silence. "I didn't ruin anything," she said quietly. "You did. You lied. You treated me like trash. You used me. I just stopped helping you hide the truth." Didi was speechless. Her face turned pale, then red with anger. But there was nothing more she could say. The truth was out. Everyone knew now, and they weren't on her side. Ino walked away, her steps slow but steady. She wasn't the maid anymore. She wasn't the quiet girl who stayed in the background. People were watching her with new eyes. Eyes full of respect, even admiration. The party was falling apart. Guests were whispering. Some were leaving. The music had stopped playing. And the bride, nowhere to be seen. Ino didn't need to scream. She didn't need to fight. She had spoken her truth, and that truth was now louder than anything Didi could ever say. This wasn't the party Didi wanted, but it was the one she had created. And Ino? She was finally free. After that unforgettable bridal shower, everything changed. Obi disappeared from the spotlight. No more wedding, no more speeches, no more lies. Some people said he travelled abroad to hide from the shame. Others said he stayed locked inside his house, refusing to talk to anyone. But one thing was clear. He lost everything with just one truth. Adanma, the bride-to-be, couldn't face the embarrassment. Her friends stopped calling. People whispered behind her back. She packed her bags and left the country quietly, hoping to start fresh somewhere far away. She had spent so much time living like a queen, but now, even with all her expensive clothes, she had no crown left. Zara, on the other hand, held her head high. She returned to her flower business, stronger than ever. She didn't cry or hide. Instead, she did something surprising. She called Ino. They met in a small cafe. No cameras, no makeup. Just two women who had been pushed aside and treated badly. Zara looked at Ino and said, "You have something powerful. You told the truth. You made people listen. Let's do more." Ino was shocked. She had never imagined herself doing anything important. But Zara believed in her, and that gave her courage. Together they started something new, a platform for women. It wasn't just a website. It was a safe space where women could share their own stories. Stories of pain, betrayal, survival, and strength. They called it Stand Tall. Women from all over the country began to write in. Some were silent for years, hiding their shame. But now they were speaking up. They weren't afraid anymore. The first post on the platform was simple, but powerful. It showed two photos side by side. One of Ino, wearing her old school uniform, carrying a tray at the bridal shower. Her eyes looked tired and sad. Next to it, a new photo. Eno, in a dark blue power suit, standing tall with a calm smile and confident eyes. The caption read, This is the same girl, but now she's no longer silent. The post went viral. Thousands of women shared it. They wrote, "I see myself in her. She gives me hope. She spoke what I've been afraid to say." Eno, the girl who once cleaned floors and cried in secret, had become a voice for many. The wedding was cancelled, but something far more beautiful had begun. Months passed, and life changed completely for Eno. The girl who once wore an old school uniform and carried trays at her stepsister's bridal shower was now someone people looked up to. Her story had inspired thousands. Women who had been afraid to speak now found the courage to share their own voices, because Eno had spoken first. That day, Eno stood on a brightly lit stage. The hall was full of people, leaders, journalists, young girls, and women from all walks of life. Cameras flashed. Applause filled the room. She had just been announced as the winner of a national award for advocacy, an award given to someone who had made a powerful difference in society. She looked elegant in a cream-coloured dress suit. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and her smile was calm but proud. As she stepped forward to receive the award, a quiet hush fell over the room. People wanted to hear what she had to say. A woman from the press held out a microphone and asked, "Eno, how did all of this begin?" Eno paused for a moment. Her mind went back to that painful day, scrubbing floors, being laughed at, treated like she didn't belong. But she didn't cry. Instead, she smiled gently and replied, "It all started the day my stepmother made me a maid at a bridal shower. She tried to make me feel small." The audience listened closely. Eno continued, "But something changed that day. I realized no one can dim your worth if you stop standing in the shadows. I stopped being quiet. I spoke up. I told the truth. And that truth started a fire that couldn't be put out." People clapped, some with tears in their eyes. Others stood up to cheer. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need to make anyone suffer. She simply rose above everything that tried to break her and turned her pain into power. From a forgotten girl who served drinks in silence, Eno had become the leader of a movement that helped women believe in their worth again. And now, standing under bright lights, holding her award, Eno proved something simple but strong, that no matter how people treat you, your value never fades. It only waits for the moment you finally believe it. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll, share it. Let the world see that no one is too small to rise, and no voice is too weak to shake walls. Drop a comment if you've ever been silent, like if you believe every woman deserves respect. Tag someone who needs to hear this today. Follow for more powerful stories that remind us your worth is not up for debate.